Welcome to another RPD video. Today we'll be talking about rest seat preparations. There are four basic types of rest seats: occlusal rests, cingulum rests, embrasure rests, and ball rests. Let's start with the occlusal rest seat. Occlusal rests are roughly triangular in shape, with a base towards the marginal ridge and an apex towards the fossa. They take up about 1/4 of the mesiodistal width of a tooth. Looking at the occlusal rest from a buccolingual dimension, they take up about 1/2 of the intercuspal width of a tooth. Upon slicing the tooth with a lightsaber, you'd be able to see the apex and the base of the occlusal rest seat. Notice how the apex is more apical to the base. This is important because it ensures what we call a positive seat. A positive seat directs the forces of the rest along the long axis of the tooth. You'd be able to know that you have a positive seat when you put an explorer onto the base of the tooth. If you put pressure apically, it should slide down to the apex just like this. All occlusal rests must have a clearance of about 1.5 millimeters to ensure adequate thickness of metal. Occasionally, an occlusal rest is needed in an area with an adjacent tooth. In those situations, the occlusal rest is shifted slightly to the lingual to facilitate access through the lingual embrasure. The tilted rest allows the minor connector to connect to the rest through the lingual embrasure. Here's a summary of all the required dimensions of an occlusal rest. Next up is the cingulum rest seat preparation. Cingulum rest seats come in three basic variants: a U-shaped variant common in maxillary lateral incisors and central incisors, a V-shaped variant common with maxillary canines, and a flat variant common with mandibular incisors. Cingulum rest seat preparations extend beyond the mesial and distal line angles on the lingual surfaces of teeth. Cingulum rest seat preparations are prepared on the flattest portion of the cingulum. They are also prepared in areas that do not interfere with occlusion. Upon sectioning with a lightsaber, you'll also be able to see that the inside portion of the rest seat preparation is more apical than the outside portion. That is to ensure the positive seat, again directing forces along the long axis of that tooth. You can confirm this by using an explorer and putting it on the outside portion of the rest seat preparation. You'd notice that the explorer would move downwards when applying apical pressure. The width of a canine rest is about 1 millimeter. The area above the rest seat should be flat with no undercuts. That is achieved by keeping the burr as close as possible to the lingual fossa while preparing that rest seat preparation. And this is a summary of all the dimensions for the cingulum rest preparation. Next up is the embrasure rest. You might notice that embrasure rests look very similar to two occlusal rests stuck to each other. That's pretty much true. Even the dimensions of each portion of the embrasure rest mimics the occlusal rest, being 1/4 the mesiodistal dimension of each tooth. The only major difference is the channel. The channel is a prepared space that allows clearance for metal to connect to clasps on both sides of the tooth. Looking at it in occlusion, you'd see that the channel needs about 1 to 1.5 millimeters of clearance. The channel also needs to be at least 2 millimeters in width and have rounded margins on all sides. Upon sectioning with a lightsaber, you'll also be able to see that on both sides of the occlusal portions of the embrasure rest, the apices are lower than the base. That helps prevent wedging of the teeth and separation in the future. This is a summary of all the dimensions of the embrasure rest. Last but not least, the ball rest seat preparation. Ball rest seat preparations are very small. If you can't see them, they're right here. They're about the width of a diameter of a number 6 round burr. They're prepared on marginal ridges, usually also on the flattest portion of that marginal ridge. Ball rest seat preparations are frequently used when there is a deep overbite that prevents the use of a cingulum rest on anterior teeth. Is that a little confusing? Understandable. Let's try explaining it in a different way. This is a case with a deep overbite. If you get the gingiva out of the way, take a closer look, you'd be able to appreciate how it's very hard to place a cingulum rest in this case. Now let's take a look at this RPD framework on the same case that has ball rests and see how it works. Let's get a little closer, also get the gingiva out of the way. Let's look at it from a slightly different angle. From this angle, you'd be able to see how that minor connector is able to snake its way through that small opening between the teeth and reach its destination onto the ball rest seat preparation. This angle also makes it clear. This is a summary of all the dimensions of a ball rest seat preparation. And with that, you have concluded the rest seat preparations, and you are rested and prepared. Thank you for joining me for this video. Join us next time for another RPD video.